COVID-19 vaccinations are available daily at your local Meijer, now for anyone 16 or older. Text COVID to 75049 to register for your free vaccinations at Meijer and get updates to your phone. Please complete only one registration at one location. Additional entries will replace your previous registration and may increase your wait time. You can also talk to your Meijer pharmacist or visit clinic.meijer.com for more information. Remember, text COVID to 75049 to get started.
Today is nonstop. And suddenly, your checking account is overdrawn. But what if we gave you more time on that one? At Huntington, if you accidentally overdraw your account by $50 or less, we've put a $50 safety zone in place, so you won't be charged an overdraft fee. It's one more way we're looking out for you, so you can have time for what matters most. Huntington, welcome. $50 safety zone does not apply to returned items. Your account will be automatically closed if it remains negative for 60 days. Learn more at huntington.com/safety zone.
Part of the Greenlit Podcast Network.
From multiple learned locations in Minneapolis or near enough, this is Nice Games Club, the show where nice game devs talk gaming and game development.
I'm Ellen Burns-Johnson, and I make nice games.
I'm Stephen McGregor, and I make nice games.
And I'm Arthur Croy. I too make nice games.
For this week's episode, our topics are PC Build 2021, The Journey Begins, and Press Reset, Book Report. And so, if everyone is ready, let's start.
Okay, first bit of news. Listeners
Yes.
may have heard last week that we had decided, out of nowhere, to update the storied feedback form that we maintain here on the program at nicegames.club/feedback.
Mm-hmm,
We've updated a few times in the past. It's a great way for us to get feedback from our listeners, but also learning a little bit about our listeners, what they want from the show, what they expect from the show. And also, we get some really nice comments there, so it's really nice to hear. And we decided we were going to give it another facelift. And so we just spent a little time doing that before we recorded this episode. So we're here to tell you we did that and make it worth our while by please going to nicegames.club/feedback and answering some of those questions.
Yes.
Reinforce our follow-through.
Yes.
We did a thing.
We completed something.
Condition us to continue doing things.
Okay, hold on though. We've completed things in the past. You know, we did Roboston. How many episodes is this? 100, 200?
This is 212.
212.
Okay.
So we've done some stuff.
I mean, to be
That's
fair, we have not
fair.
finished this episode yet, so don't count your chickens before they hatch.
Yeah, I'm tapping out now. We're
point.
done. We can come back to it later.
I mean, I can hit stop now and that'll do it, but
But yes, no, for real though. The feedback form has been updated. Please, you can fill it out at nicegames.club/feedback. We very much appreciate your feedback. And it's a very short feedback form too. It's not very long. It should take less than 5 minutes, I think, to complete. So,
And most of the questions are optional.
yeah,
I think there's one required question.
right.
So
Right.
if you just want to fill out one question and say, hey, I like this form, that's fine.
We're gonna just get a bunch of responses with that now.
Just as long
But,
as
you
you
know,
guys know it's there.
well, what are the things we changed about it? What's new about the form now? Like just a little bit of process here. We still want to get the same kind of information from people. We wanted to be a little more specific in this era of the program.
We changed some of the formatting to make it so that it's more clear to us what feedback people are giving to us, and it would end up being more useful information. I think we in the past, in the previous feedback form, we had a bunch of information or questions about like the kinds of episodes we were doing, and like our things have changed partly due to us being recording remotely now, but also due to us just adapting as we do.
Mm-hmm.
People change, shows change, and so like we changed some of the questions that we have on there to get better information about the kinds of content that we may want to provide in the future to people as well. Like I don't know if you're interested in us doing streaming on Twitch or YouTube or something. It could happen.
Steven sounds really excited about it. So if you're as excited as Steven, or impossibly more so, perhaps, you can let us know. Yeah, we had a couple of, we always talk about like what more do we want to do with the show, and so we have a list of things we want to try someday, and so we thought we'd put those lists and actually show them to you, our listener, and maybe you can say, yeah, that sounds like a cool idea. no promises. But things we want to do with the program. We've done a couple of live shows, and we've done now that we do remotely. Like, would you be interested in hearing us do the show as we record it before it's edited and released? And just things like that. And there's plenty of places to tell us your actual thoughts, not just like check a box. And that's one of the things that Ellen, you brought to the forum, is to have more of these open-ended questions. Just let people share their thoughts with us, rather than us trying to get a lot of qualitative data, which is maybe not what our feedback form is good for, right?
Yeah, I think we shifted the form to be less quantitative, and more just open-ended, and try to streamline some things. We reformatted some of the questions to make them a little bit easier to answer and get rid of some questions and so on and so forth. But we'll give you a tease of what those questions might be later in the episode. The only other thing I'd add is we tried to add some of our personality in there. So it's not going to be like your academic survey, because that's not us, you guys.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah.
Brainy. Not academic.
Right.
So Stephen, before we move on from this, where might people go one last time to provide this feedback to us?
nicegames.club/feedback.
All right. Wait a minute. I'm looking at the notes here. Stephen, did you sneak this in here? Fingeance is out in April?
Maybe. Yeah. I might have put that on there. Yes.
So no.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Okay. So we're planning on releasing the game in April. That is the plan. Mid-April. Not the end of April. Mid.
Wait a minute. When listeners hear this, it will be mid-April.
Oh yeah. So that's part of maybe why I slipped it in here.
Oh.
Yep. So oh dear, when is this episode coming out? We might have links and stuff for like when the man, I'm making it sound a lot less.
This is a real Fingeance style announcement, let's just say.
Just start over. Yeah, game's coming out in April. Look forward to it. We may have links because the date is not exactly finalized, but we have like a week that we're planning on getting it out there. And really, like we haven't worked on Fingeance in a while. And but like the game's good. We want other people to be able to play it.
Yeah.
Particularly listeners. Like I've talked about it on the show a bunch, and we've showed trailers and we went through the code on it, but I don't think listeners have really had a great opportunity to play the game. So when the game is out, you will be able to get it. And I think if I remember correctly, we talked about it being free. But if it's not free, then edit this out, whoever's editing.
No. If it's not free, please pay for it, listener. It is a really good game.
Right.
It's worth however much money Steven's asking, and twice as much.
Oh.
I mean, but if it's free, then you get it for free. But if it's not, buy it.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, look forward to that. We'll definitely at least have a trailer out and stuff. And like,
yeah.
We'll announce it. It'll be out on itch. That is our plan. So, yeah.
I'm so pumped.
That's that.
Eric's gonna be so excited.
I know.
He loves that game.
I'm really excited to hear Eric's thoughts.
After we're done recording, I'm gonna go down and tell him right away.
Oh goodness.
And I'll tell you what his response is.
There are definitely a lot of people I could name, and many I've just witnessed anticipating this game. So I think there will be a lot of people happy by its release. But I want to ask you a little more about it, because I'm literally just learning this as we recorded. So you got together and you just kind of said, like, now is the time? Like, what motivated you to do it? Is it just it's about time, or was there something specific that you, like a question you needed to answer that you weren't able to answer until now?
It was someone had approached Lane on saying that they were like, I guess someone had said that like Fingeance is the most anticipated game that's coming out from Minnesota this year or something like that. And I was like, and so Lane was like, yeah, we should try to release this game. But part of it, I mean, I guess I'll be a little bit candid. Part of the issue that we've been having is that we've been working on separate things and we haven't had as much energy to work on side projects. And so there was a period of time when we were working on Fingeance a lot over while we were working from home at our own jobs, but like Charles is a super famous game dev now who almost beat out The Last of Us Part 2, and so he doesn't have time for this game anymore. And I'm just teasing. But like I work on games full time. And so it's harder for me to put in additional effort to work on a game outside of working on games. So what we did is we rescoped what we want from Vengeance. Like, cause a lot of the stuff that we have, a lot of stuff we already have in Vengeance is completed content. And so really what we're doing is we're just like rescoping what we want from it and, making some small edits to make sure that the game functions and does not explode people's computers when they put it on their platforms. And stuff. And then shipping it out on itch. So, yeah.
So a lot of it, maybe, I think there's probably there must have been a time in between when you no longer had enough time to work on it, but you still were hoping that you could do a larger launch for it, perhaps. And then at a certain point, you became more realistic about like, it's now just, if we wait to work on it more or make it bigger, then it'll never get done. So it's excellent now. And I think people have been telling you guys that for probably a long, long time.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just you finally believed it yourselves.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you just have to come to the realization yourself. Like the game. Yeah. But not just that, but like the game is the work we did over last year did improve the game significantly. And I think it is an even better game than it was even before that. So like, I think that like all of that time was worthwhile. It's just, I think that like there were some ambitions and things that we had that was, for keeping us from wanting to release it when we wanted to. So, yeah.
And maybe less about the game itself, but about the launch of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we want to, this is what happens when you've worked on a game for this long. Is that like, your ambitions for the game change too. Like, I think initially, like when we first started working with Vengeance, it was supposed to be our intro. Like we were supposed to use this as a platform to be in the industry and like maybe make money off of that and stuff. But like I made money off of it because I have this job that I got due to Vengeance. And so like even without it being out, it's already achieved that goal for me. And so what I want from it now is I just want people to play it and enjoy it and have a good time with it. So that's what I'm going for.
And without regular playtest events, you have not seen people play it in a while.
Yeah.
So that itch has not been scratched, I bet, is probably part of it. Well, I'm jazzed, and I'm glad you let me interview about it just now, Improv, because I'm very, very excited, and listeners should be too. Vengeance is astounding, and I haven't played it in a while, so I guarantee you it's even better than I think it is. And I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Yeah, I'm super pumped. Like, I guess that's what I'm going to do the second half of April is play Vengeance with Eric in the basement.
Oh.
I might be fully vaccinated by then, but like, won't matter because I won't go anywhere. I'll be playing Vengeance.
Yeah. Yay. Okay.
Ellen, you got news too?
Yeah.
Okay, this is not big news. It's small news. And
it's big news to me because I'm very curious about it.
Oh yeah, I have one right here. So I got this doodad called it's by Razer. There are many other brands and sub-brands and things of devices like this out there, but it is a mobile controller that is like an accordion style one. So here's what it looks like when it's collapsed. And of course I will put pictures and things in the show notes. But basically when you put your phone in it, it feels a little bit like a Nintendo Switch. It kind of telescopes out, and I will expand it really quick so you guys can see. And then you've got this controller that you can put your phone in landscape mode.
Oh my. Okay.
Yeah. So
dang, that thing's kind of beefy when you expand it.
It is, well, it's an Android compatible device, and there are lots of real big Android phones.
Well, it's got to fit in your hands too. I think, but a lot of efforts to make like control schemes for mobile devices have focused on the portability of mobile. But I think this form factor, which isn't super new, but I think is being refined more and more, and is becoming more popular. Like, is finally, I think, as the Switch just proved to people that this makes sense. But it needs to be a little bulkier than you'd expect a mobile phone to be.
That's fair.
I think that people finally understood that.
So here I have a Pixel 4a, so it's not a giant phone. And I'll probably never have a giant phone because I don't have giant hands. But you can see it kind of like snaps in like so.
Oh.
And then do.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's really comfortable to hold. And I'm excited just to kind of doodle around with it. I didn't get it for any specific games. I just got it because I liked the idea of it and wanted to see what was out there. Haven't found a whole bunch of stuff so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I wonder,
what comes
like
with that.
Android TV and an Apple TV, the device, not the service, support controllers. And for a long time, have tried to, there was that era of micro consoles, like Android-based, like Ouya and Game Stick and so on, that tried to bring Android gaming to the couch. But I think maybe the ultimate solution to having controller games on Android is devices like this. Is actually just selling games, standard style games that maybe they have some touch controls, but are actually meant for console style control schemes. And I would love to see the mobile marketplaces curate and catalog that stuff, because the mobile devices are very powerful computing machines. You wouldn't know it necessarily because of how their use case works. And a lot of mobile games have excellent, fantastic graphics, but their designs are maybe not limited, but they're constrained and defined by their input methods. I would love to see. I mean, there's no reason you can't port any Switch game to Android, really. It's just that no one has the buttons for it, and why not? Why don't we have the buttons for it?
Yeah, so I'm curious to see where it goes now that there seem to be more and more of these out there. I mean, there are lots of controllers that you can just like stick your phone on the front of it and kind of clicks in. I don't like that. It feels janky and like I'm going to knock it over. And you never know when a dog is going to jump in your lap and knock something out of your hand.
Right.
That's a problem we all have, yeah.
Yeah. But mostly I just don't feel like the balance of the controller is one of the things that I really like, that tactile. Like that just the feeling of having a controller in your hand, my hand, is a good feeling. Like it's a good sensation because it's always like well designed, even if they're a little too big. Like it's nice to feel like how it curves between your fingers and things like that. And the controllers that are like a regular controller, but then you put the weight of a smartphone that's 5 inches, 6 inches long on the front of it, it throws the balance off, and I don't like that feeling. I am realizing maybe I'm a little bit pickier about stuff like that than I thought I was.
I would not be surprised if there were a lot of people who feel the same way as you do with that kind of stuff. And they've just accepted what they see on TV or whatever.
Yeah.
I will say, so I've tried out Amazon's Luna controller, which has one of those clips that the controller is just a standard gamepad style, but Luna is like Stadia, where it's meant to be on your PC and your TV and your phone or whatever. So that's the sort of ecosystem for a controller like that. And I don't hate it, but it is, you kind of have to get it just so, because this arm has a pivot. And I think about like, well, this isn't that much different from like a Game Boy, because the thing with a Switch is that it's not that it's enormous, but your hands are a little bit further apart from each other. So when you're looking down, it ergonomically, it's slightly more comfortable to play it kind of in your lap or whatever. Whereas with a Game Boy, you kind of would need to hold it up a little bit more to be comfortable, because I don't know.
Your elbows are further in.
Yeah, there's a little chicken wing kind of process going. And I think with this, if you want to play it like a Game Boy, you got to hold it up a little bit, and then the weight of the thing is even worse than than the hypothetical you're describing, Ellen. So I think naturally it's a tricky form factor. And for those types of ecosystems, because it's all tied together, right? Stadia and Luna operate this way and have they promote this type of thing, so you can just use it as a regular controller on a TV or a PC or whatever. And so it has that flexibility. But every time I've tried it out with mobile, maybe it's because I'm indoors all the time, but like I'm just like, why am I doing this? Why am I not on my TV if I can?
Right. Yeah. So, and I don't know. We'll see. The thing that came up, there were like I searched specifically for controller compatible games, and there were a few things that came up. None of them had particularly great reviews. Maybe a few did. They were racing games. There was one like zombie first-person shooter out there, which I'll try because it's cool on multiple fronts. And an independent search, I downloaded. It's like Mario Kart Tour. Yeah, and I was thinking, oh, this has got to have controller support, right? No, it doesn't.
Really?
Yeah, there are like hacks you can do. I found a few on YouTube, but I'm too lazy to do them.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer because like that would be perfect.
Yeah.
But
well, it's interesting because it's like, of course, that's the perfect game for it, but also Nintendo is very much of the we made it to work one way.
Right.
And so of course their mobile games are going to be that same.
Exactly. So we'll see. I'll have more to report in a couple weeks when we record again. And, when listeners listen to that recording, I might have some more fun things. I'm going to see what I can do with the Steam Link.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We'll see. And I will report back.
Cool.
Well, hey, there's no reason you can't. I mean, Finjan started out as an Android game, right?
Yeah, a long time ago. Where are you going with this, right?
Get that thing on Ellen's New Deal. Come on.
Oh, boy.
I mean, all right, well, I'll try.
All right, Monkey's Paw, the game's delayed.
Oh, man.
So you must have been buying a lot of things recently because you've been working on PC build. That's not a good transition. I don't know.
Steven, you get a good thing going and then you lose your nerve.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel right.
It was working though. You were doing it. You were doing it, buddy.
Okay, all right, okay.
Just commit to it.
You must have been buying so many new things recently, Ellen, because I see here that you've been planning a PC build this year.
I think the first version was better. But go on.
So I need to lose my nerve in order to do the transition. Got it. Okay.
Yes and no. I'm planning to spend a lot of money.
That's why I was like, this doesn't make sense. This is the plan part.
Now I get it. Yeah, that was a pretty bad transition.
Goodness. Yep.
You can give us feedback on this segment on our feedback forum. Nice Games Club /feedback. So I will admit to having developed a little bit of a retail therapy problem during the pandemic because, since I'm not seeing anything particularly new, the one way I can do that is to get new things delivered to my house, which is not great because I don't need them and also shouldn't be spending lots of money right now. But yeah, I did make a plan to work on building a new PC this year. And we haven't really reached a point, I think, where that's going to be stuff I start, I'm not going to get parts delivered to the house next week. Mm-hmm. But I am kind of working on what parts I want, what build I want. And the other thing I'm working on is making sure I have the skills to actually be able to build it. So I have a home-built PC now, but I didn't build it. Eric did. He has been building his computer since he was 11 or 12. So I have it out if I want to not do it. Yeah. But the thing is, I really want to learn more about it. So my goal for this year is to build my own PC, and I will absolutely go to various people I know for help when I need it. But the other thing I was hoping to be able to do is kind of bring some of that process to the show for a few different reasons. We're not like a hardware show. And I would say I'm not a gearhead. Mark is. Steven, I'm not sure.
I know nothing about computers.
Okay, cool.
I basically hired somebody to build my computer. And by hired, I mean I got our boyfriend Dylan to do it.
Thanks, Dylan. Yeah, another person I can reach out to if I need help. But we're not intending to switch the show to a technical, to be super technical, but there are a lot of interesting things that go into building a system. Like, what do the individual hardware components do? And how are they made? Who invented them? Where they come from? What's the supply chain? Why can't you get video cards right now? Those are all interesting questions. And I would like to explore some of those questions in a series of podcast episodes over the next year or so. Hopefully just a few months.
Well, what's great about your plan is that because of the supply shortage, you're definitely going to be stretching this out over many episodes.
Yeah.
You have no choice in the matter.
I have no choice. But yeah, it's not going to be like a back-to-back thing. This is going to be something that we'll sprinkle in throughout the next several months. The other thing I want to wrap in whenever we do an episode about this is kind of the game dev or game design implications of hardware capabilities.
Yeah.
Which is interesting for lots of different reasons. And one of the reasons I think it's interesting is because those capabilities change a lot. And I think that the capabilities of the hardware can often outstrip our understanding of the implications, what that actually means for design. So when we look at a specific, when we look at processors, we'll talk about those kinds of things when we look at processors, and I'll hopefully by the end of it have a nice shiny PC that I put together myself and hopefully it didn't fry.
Well, I like that direction on it too, because like these are things that really do affect the design of games in a way that that we maybe aren't fully aware of, and like we can go into detail on it as we're going through these episodes. But like for instance, like the PlayStation 5, has a solid state drive, a very fast solid state drive, and that can change the way that games are designed. They no longer have to have those cute loading scenes in between different like locations and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now you just can literally fast travel, and in the blink of an eye you're in a new location.
Fast travel's finally fast.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't be the one who's played Assassin's Creed and gone like, it's not that far away. Should I just go there?
Right.
Instead of waiting for the bus, basically.
Exactly. Though, like, and that kind of stuff, like, can very, very much impact things. And PCs in particular, like, there are a lot of design considerations that are necessary in order for you to build a game on PC, because everybody's PC is different. And you can't just, unlike a console, you can't just assume that everybody has these specs and build the game specifically for those specs. You have to build assuming that they have this range of specs. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that range of specs could cause the game to fail in a certain part of the game where it will not in this other game. And only because you decided to get the I don't know enough about graphics cards, the ATI graphics card versus the NVIDIA graphics card.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
So close.
I told you I didn't build my PC.
Dylan,
but like,
get on here.
Yeah, tell me what to do here. But like, yeah, those kinds of considerations are very valuable when you're making your own game. So it's something you want to keep in mind.
Well, there's two interesting examples of that are one's recent and one's applicable to our game, Widget Satchel. I have a pretty beefy machine, and I also have a couple of really old, crappy machines. And so I use that for testing on Widget Satchel for the PC version. I was not able to do a full suite of compatibility checks. I think indie developers, I'll absolve you from that as well. Like, there's enough cross compatibility, but there are going to be edge cases that you will not understand, and that you should be prepared to have to investigate. And one of the things that a player, Widget Satchel, got back to me and said, "Hey, jumping doesn't work." And I'm like, "Oh no," because we had playtest feedback about how the jump feels, and that's what I thought this was. And I'm like, "Okay, well, we can explain to you how it's supposed to work or whatever, but we're done. We're not fixing it." But then he showed a video, a capture of in the corner of the screen, you could see the live inputs highlighted in the corner. Like, he went to a lot of effort to make this footage showing that literally you press jump and nothing happened. And I was like, I went through the code and I'm like, no, like Stephen bulletproofed this part. There's no way. There's just no way. Yeah. And we ended up deducing that his frame rate was too high. And so when you make games, there's a difference between a frame cycle and like in Unity anyway, there's update versus fixed update, right? You have physics tends to run on fixed update because you want physics to be calculated in even intervals, but update runs every time a frame goes. So if you have your game running at 240 frames, you can show visually a lot of those things. Those systems interact a lot, and Unity is a little opaque as to how they interact sometimes. And so I just said, like, can you just cap your frame rate at 120? And he did, and it was fine. It worked. And that happened recently with a game that when we were doing Twin Cities Playtest, which is our monthly stream of in-development games, we had a developer who made a game called Emery, and he had the exact same problem on my machine. And so I capped my frame rate to 60, worked fine. Yeah. And it's just like one of those things that, like, and I only knew how to diagnose it because it was minutes before we went live, because it had happened to me in a similar situation. And so it's not always about it not running well on a low-end machine. right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people's PCs are
It's the opposite of that, yeah.
Yeah.
And these are situations you cannot test for because people have the wildest configurations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know?
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
So hopefully, Ellen, you won't make a ridiculously too good PC. Or actually, if you made a
Yeah,
ridiculously
you make
too good
something
PC,
crazy and unique, so we have a test
we can
case.
test on it. Yeah.
That sounds expensive, you guys. Seriously, I saw a graphics card on PC Part Picker for like $10,000 yesterday.
What?
I mean, I think there's probably not many that are going to...
Right, MSRP $450, but...
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's wow.
Yeah. I'm not doing that.
Okay.
I'm not
I mean,
doing that.
but you could though. No. That's too much money.
Considerations for some of these parts really depends on. This is one of those things that's it's a hobby for a lot of people, and when you buy a computer every 3 years, you can kind of stay up on everything because you're always pretty close to needing to know this stuff.
Mhm.
But if you're like me and you buy a computer once every 7 years, that's powerful enough to last you 7 years. Everything you know is out of date by the time you need it again. And one of the things that was sort of interesting a couple of years ago, as graphics cards were being capable, VR was the threshold. Can this card run VR? And I remember that being a big deal. And now it doesn't matter anymore. And I don't know how to compare like the latest. I mean, other than you can't get the latest cards. Like, is there a reason to just get last generation or 2 generations ago card? Like, how much are you sacrificing? Because I don't see that threshold of can or not VR. Like, I don't know what the real difference is because I lost that frame of reference I used to have for like, why you would want the better one,
Yeah.
Other than more pixels, more rays, the sort of, which is all fine and good.
Yeah, well, those are the kind of decisions and trade-offs that we're going to go into kind of part by part. I can just say, kind of setting up some context. For me personally, pixels and rays can be a source of joy in gameplay, but they're not the driving source of when I enjoy a game.
Sure.
That like experience of, oh my gosh, I can see everything. It wears off for me very quickly, and that's okay. It's just going to reflect in the build that I make. And everyone has a different opinion on this, right? Like the console versus PC gaming debate is not really what we're getting into here. I'm really hoping to look into like the technical details, not like what should you play games on? Play games on the thing you have and that you like. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
But I did want to look up a little bit, so to see what statistics are out there about who plays on what. And the closest thing I could find in a cursory search was basically like, what do people play on? And I think looking at this study, they just asked people, like, have you played on this kind of device? Have you played on this kind of device? Have you played on this kind of device? And unsurprisingly, a good chunk of people have played games on smartphones. It was 18 years and older in the sample size of 4,000 respondents. So, and in 2020. So 61% of those people said yes, they'd played on a smartphone. Not surprised.
Yeah.
52% said they've played on a dedicated game console, right? Okay. And 49% said on a PC. So there's overlap.
Yeah.
Not surprising either.
Right.
I'm actually quite surprised how few of those respondents answered play games on PC.
Really?
Yeah, I would have guessed it'd be 60 or 70%, just
Really?
without any information, just as a raw guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that part of the issue with like trying to be a PC gamer is that now it sounds like we're talking about PC versus console, but whatever. Part of the issue with being a PC gamer is that it is expensive and difficult just to have the understanding of what you need in order to get the PC. If you don't have a frame of reference, it's hard to know what things you'll need in order to make a good gaming PC to play fancy.
Yeah, that's true. But I guess for me, the threshold to play a game on a PC is pretty low. And I don't mean solitaire. I mean like most cheap PC parts will play most Steam games. Right. There isn't, and this wasn't always true, but now just like with phones, most phones can play most relatively high-end phone games. I don't play a lot on my phone, hardly ever, and I don't have a huge Steam library.
Yeah.
So I always feel like an extreme outlier. I just assumed that everyone, whether they have a PlayStation or whatever, has played some games on their PC. So I'm just surprised to see those numbers be about the same, even accounting for the overlap between them. But that's really interesting. It changes kind of how I think about like what, not a gamer audience, but just how much of a general audience are people who play games on PC. Wouldn't call themselves gamers, but it's a lot smaller than I thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was actually thought it was going to be less. Than the console response. And again, there's overlap between the 61% and 52% and 49% added together is more than 100%. There's overlap between these three categories. But yeah, I guess I expected it to be lower. And we don't have to dig into the details of the study right now because, like I said at the top of the show, we're brainy, not academic. That was this show, right? Or was it the last episode?
It was this one.
Okay, good. Yeah, but maybe it could have to do with the way that the question was phrased as well. So we can nerd out on that independently. It's just, I don't know, it's interesting. And we'll look into this some more. It is a hobby for some people, right? And then we're not talking about gaming. We're talking about the building of a gaming PC. Right. And one thing that anyone who's looked into building their own PC or is into PC gaming has come across is PCPartPicker.com. If you haven't built your own PC, you should go check it out for a couple of reasons. One, I think that thinking about building your own computer if you haven't done it before, you don't know anyone who's done it, it can be a little intimidating. I know this because I feel that way. But this kind of starts breaking it down and makes it easier for you to find things and things that are compatible with one another. And the other cool thing is that people post their builds. So there are two sides of that coin. You can go and see what someone has built, and you can see what it looks like when it's finished. And you can say, I want all the same parts. I want to do this exact same thing. So I think that kind of lowers the threshold for entry. The other thing is that a lot of those builds look really, really cool and super intimidating to put together. So it might make you feel like, oh, I can't possibly do this. But there's, like you were saying just a moment ago, Mark, cheap parts can play most games. Yeah. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars to start out with. There are builds out there.
You always could, and you never forget that. It's like, but I always could pay a little bit more.
No one will stop you.
Yeah.
So, so that's going to be an adventure we kind of go on together through the next several months. And if you guys, as listeners, have any suggestions or warnings, please share them because I will need them. But yeah, for now, I'll post some of the research and the statistics that we cited here and links to some build resources. So if you're also looking to build a computer in 2021, or if you just like to follow along, you can do that.
Mm-hmm. So when we take up this topic again, Ellen, where do you think you'll be? Do you think you'll have a single part in your hand, or will nothing be able? You someone be able to find anything? Do you expect?
Oh my gosh, what a good question.
I didn't mean to make this a difficult question.
Well, I think I would like to have a part in my hand. But the thing is, I'd really like to dig into the graphics card side of things first, because that's the most interesting to me, like the background of it and the technical capabilities and implications of graphics cards are most interesting to me. And they're also the hardest to get right now.
Yeah.
So we might do that episode in the near future, but I'm not sure if I'll actually have a part in hand when we do that.
Yeah, this may just be therapy for Ellen, because instead of building a PC, we can just talk about all the things you're learning about building a PC. Then when it finally comes time to do it, it'll be done in an hour. You'll get it all shipped, and it'll just be like you'll have it all ready to go.
Potentially, yes.
Well, we promised it. Here it is. Feedback form. nicegames.club/feedback. Fill it out, please. We've got questions. You have answers.
We did talk about it a lot at the beginning of the episode, right?
We did, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But maybe we could give an example of a question or two.
That seems That seems like a fair and reasonable.
A really good idea, Ellen.
Yeah,
Gosh.
yes.
I came up with it right now. On the spot.
Well, one question we'd like to hear about is how do you like our mix of episode types? We've been changing things up. Like, last year we did a lot of interview episodes, and we didn't do as many Nice Games Jams and bulletins. And we'd like to know if that is the mix that we currently have. Is that appealing to you or not? You want more roundtables? You want me to shut up more? Us to shut up more? Let interviewers talk a little bit? You know,
how much do you want us to shut up? Is the question.
Yeah, you can answer that on the forum.
From a scale of a little to already, get now, please.
Yeah. Another example would be like what kinds of things from us we'd be more interested in seeing. We talked about this a little bit on the show before, but like maybe we could stream some things on Twitch. Maybe we could compile all of our Nice Games Jams into a compilation book, and then like y'all could play them at your homes. You can already do that with their notes, but like it'd be nice to have a convenient location to see them. Maybe you want to have a Nice Games Club T-shirt, you know, things like that. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. So not just the content of the show, but just like what else does this show mean to you, and how else would you personally like to engage with it, and what do you think we should be doing with this platform that we've developed? And you know, now that the show's been going on long enough, like what guests should we bring back? Like what topics should we revisit? Because we always talk about like, have we done this already? But we haven't really asked like what should we do again? And we now the show is aged enough that would provide some really good context in relation to those old episodes. And we want to hear from you. What should we do there? We're not totally certain. So let us have it.
Yeah.
Aged and learned.
That's the Nice Games Club brand. Visit nicegames.club/feedback to give us your thoughts.
To Spartans, there is no finish line for excellence. Little wonder MSU is a leading research university in the world's top 100. With 34 programs ranked in the top 25 nationally by U.S. News & World Report, and #1 programs in nuclear physics, supply chain management, and education, we are united by a passion to make a difference. See all we're making possible at msutoday.msu.edu. Spartans will.
Hey you! Yeah you! Do you like podcasts? Are you into anime? Does analysis happen to tickle your pickle?
Then look no further. Here at the Spirit Hunters podcast, we happen to love all three.
Every week, we'll be watching, recapping, and analyzing episodes of Yoshihiro Togashi's famous manga and anime, Hunter x Hunter.
Check us out at the Spirit Hunters on the Greenlit Podcast Network.
Fans of video games, history, or video game history will definitely want to listen to Retronauts. Each week, Bob Mackey and myself, that's Jeremy Parrish, dive into the stories behind the greatest games of the past and the history behind the hits of today. Check us out every Monday on the Greenlit Podcast Network.
So we mentioned recently on the show how aged the program has become. Very, very recently we mentioned that.
Very recently, in fact.
You may have heard that episode. And as a result of that, we get on some press lists now. We're game developers. That's our main thing. But we're, I guess also, and I'm saying this through clenched teeth, we're content creators. And so we have to embrace that side of it. And what that means is that we get press releases, we get advanced game codes, and we tried to make the best of those opportunities as they come. But one of the things that's been more recent is we've been offered, advanced copies of books. And one that made a lot of sense for our audience is Jason Schreier's Press Reset. Most of our listeners probably know who Jason Schreier is. He's an investigative reporter. He works for Bloomberg currently. He was a long time at Kotaku. And it's almost a cliche for his reporting on the working conditions for game developers. And so he's a very solid reputation for that kind of in-depth investigative reporting that has made an impact in our industry. And so I'm an admirer of his, and I think, or rather, when we had the opportunity to get an advanced copy of his new book, I absolutely jumped at it. His prior book, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, I had talked about on the show long ago when that came out. I love that book. And that book told the story of developers who just work their asses off to get a game done, and it's a development story, and these chapters are individual sort of long reads about these, and they're more in depth than you get from usually from like a game journalism site, and lots of original reporting, really, really great stories. But this one, Press Reset, has a completely different premise. It's a similar structure. Each chapter is devoted to a story of a particular studio or group of developers, but it's not about developing games. It's about what happens when your game studio goes under, and how do you press reset? So there's the title. And what's interesting about it is a bunch of the early chapters actually tie into each other. And I think that's my book report to finish this intro is this book will be out in a couple of weeks. As you listen to this episode, we'll put a link into the show notes for you to find more about it and pre-order if you're so inclined. But I'll just give you my feedback, and we can talk a little bit about the subjects it brings up as well. One of the things I really like about the structure of the book is that it's really true to its premise. It is not about how these games are made, and that makes it really focused in a way that, and you don't miss that part of it. And that's what I really liked about it. It very much lets you know what it's going to be about, and it sticks to it. And you see this a lot of times when you read about games. It's kind of difficult to not talk about all of it, right? Right. Like when you talk about there's this sales situation and these executives and this bug, and it all mingles together and interacts with each other. And that's definitely true. And that makes it difficult to cover this industry as well, and to explain it to people who don't know enough about it, which can be a barrier to change if not enough people know about how it works. But I think Schreier did a really good job of picking a single angle and sticking to it. And it makes the stories really compelling, particularly in the case that if you know about them already. So a lot of these, and this was the same for his last book, some of these stories you've never heard anything about. And some of them you've read a lot about already. But because the book is comprised entirely of original reporting, a lot of it is new. Pretty much every quote in the book is brand new. It calls out when it's not, and you don't hear it that often. And that makes it a really vital piece of information. A lot of times, the books that we as game developers read about our industry usually tend to be of the how did Sega and Nintendo fight in the 90s? That's the kind of entertaining style of book that also informs you. And a lot of that is usually looking back or doing lots of research or compiling a lot of disparate sources. And I think what makes this book unique, and I've hit on it a couple of times already, but it's really, really important. It's just a ton of original reporting. And that makes it really, really valuable and vital. On the other hand, I think what that does as a negative is it makes the world seem really small. And part of it is because there's these links between chapters, which is interesting from a narrative perspective if you're telling a story, and it's really well crafted in that sense. But having swimmed around in this industry at the shallow level that I have, I know the world is bigger than is being described here. And I do wonder how a layperson wanting to learn more about how the industry works, I do wonder if they'll come away at this and feeling that it's actually less approachable than even they thought. I'm a little worried about that, perhaps. But my perspective is different, so I'm kind of just projecting what I think someone else might think, frankly. So maybe that's not wise. But I think that's kind of unavoidable because the way it's structured really services the narrative. It makes a very entertaining read. But I think there's a little bit of that's my buyer beware on that. Is it does make the universe seem incredibly small, and maybe that's just how it is. Maybe that's the ultimate truth of the matter, and it's not just the impression that's being led.
I haven't read the book, obviously, but because it's not out yet, and I didn't get the copy. But
you had the link, Stephen.
I had the link, but okay, fine. Anyway, I didn't read the book yet. But I do like I see where you're coming from. In that it making the video game development world feel small is a good and bad choice. But I think that in a lot of ways, the game development world is kind of small. Maybe in the ways that it is described in the book. Just because I have very frequently just here in Minnesota, it feels like the world is small yet big. In that I will regularly run into people who I know at a completely different convention that I didn't tell them I was going to meet them at and stuff all the time. In a lot of times, a lot of partnerships and things get built based off of those chance meetings, those random chance meetings that happen so frequently. So I mean, not to argue that it looking small is necessarily all bad, but like, I guess like, I don't know. I guess the world in some ways, it does feel a little small.
Well, I think you hit on it exactly, which is that when me reading it, I'm getting this impression, but I'm unclear as to whether that's a consequence of the way that the narrative is structured, because there's a lot of strength to how it's put together. Or if it's just a truth that isn't that examined. There isn't a lot of discussion in the book about how small this world is.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so that leaves me a little bit uncertain and left to sort of my own outside knowledge to make an inference. But of course, I'm not certain, right? So that's a little bit. But then again, that's kind of like a third order subject in terms of what the book is about.
Right.
And
that's fair.
Partly it's because it does such a good job of not making me care what's missing from the book elsewise. So that is sort of I would appreciate maybe a further exploration of that angle, I suppose. So that's me wanting more from the book than it's promising is really what it is. But one of the consequences of or what brings me to this and what's a good side of that is how characters are introduced. And so when you're writing nonfiction, you still have characters. They're just real people. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, and I think will really benefit people who are looking to learn more about the industry and not people who are familiar with it already, is you get introduced to people and you learn about them before you understand their relevance to the story. You get a hint at who they are in the place of the story, but then you kind of step back a moment and hear about their background and their aspirations, and you get to you identify and sympathize with these characters. They become the main characters of this chapter, even if they aren't the main actor in the story. And I think that's certainly a consequence of sourcing, right? Of the reporter's sources. And I think it's really well structured here because it gives you kind of in a narrative sense. It makes the story good and compelling. Because you're invested in what happens to these people. You're like, oh my God, they just bought a house. And I know this company's going to fall apart because that's what this book is about. So you just kind of there's a kind of a tension and a drama that is not usually seen in these kinds of exposés on what is often covered as scandals. But the way this book approaches some of these companies that tank or games that don't do well is really, it's much more, it humanizes a lot of the players, and it tells the story in a way that is less salacious. And I give it a lot of credit for that because it makes it engaging and entertaining without you're not rubbernecking at these stories, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of sympathy even for the types of characters in a tale like these that you wouldn't normally have sympathy for.
That's really good. I like that a lot because it makes it, you can tell, listeners, that we are humans and we are our own characters and our own stories and such.
Good. Fooled them for another week.
Beep boop, Stephen.
oh, my bad. No. But we have a platform in which to do that. I think a lot of AAA developers don't have those. They don't have those kinds of resources. They can't really explain the fact that they inherited a bunch of loans or something and they need to pay these off, but they're devoted to making sure that this game sells well or something like that. I don't know if that's a story in the book. Again, I didn't read it, but those kinds of stories are not told, and I think that this is a good platform for that kind of stuff to be said, and I think that's really important to see. That's good.
And I think what the one knock I would give on this, and I think this is very much related to the sources, is that as an investigative reporter with a reputation, there are people who won't talk to Jason Schreier, right?
Sure.
It's like being Schreiered is like a cliche in AAA, right? And I think that's oversold a little bit. I think nobody knows they're the bad guy, you know what I mean? So it's not like they're not going to hide necessarily as much. But there's a lot of language in the book about, particularly the chapters that focus on EA, about the sort of faceless corporate decision makers and how obviously stupid they all are. And not that there isn't evidence for that, but I feel like that's the only angle in the book that is sort of, it's a little caricatured. There's particularly we talk about the Dead Space series, which was a real up and down saga. The closing of that studio And it really talked about how EA, that was the time when EA was really focused on making all of their games service games, making sure everything had an online component. And this was like a big mistake from them that they're only now starting to learn from. But in that era, Visceral just wanted to make these single player, sci-fi horror games that were really well received. That's what they wanted to make. And the book kind of says that, EA, all they wanted was this, and then they finally closed the studio down. But when you think about the actual facts of the matter, they made 3 Dead Space games that were, each of them were at the time depicted in the story as disappointing for EA in terms of its sales and impact. They made 3 of those over the course of many years before EA pulled the plug. And so I think there's a little bit of sort of fairy tale quality to these sorts of things. When it's like, as an indie developer, I'm sitting here going, I would love 8 years to fail and fail for a corporate overlord before they finally gave me a generous severance package. Like, there's a little bit of seeing, maybe that's from my perspective, but just seeing some of the sort of reduction of these and I mention it because it's an exception to how thorough and interesting the book treats a lot of subjects. It's just a place where, and it's very easy for a reader, even people in the industry who are not the faceless, most of us are not the faceless corporate executives, to easily vilify that process. And also because we know for a fact that EA's strategy was bad and wrong. Like, there's no sympathy for that necessarily. Right. But just when you actually put it up, and if you like put it out in Post-it notes on a wall, you're like, oh, actually, this isn't the disaster it's being, or it isn't the crime necessarily that's being sort of depicted as. And I feel there's just a couple of instances where it got a little bit too casual with drawing those kinds of conclusions. And the only other knock I'd have on the book is something that I've definitely seen from Schreier's reporting at Bloomberg, which is that occasionally he'll take a whole paragraph to describe what microtransactions are. And then later in the book, he'll use jargon that you would not understand if you were not well familiar with the industry. And I think that's a case of, this is definitely a book for a general audience. It will be appreciated especially by gamers and game developers. But I think because of how expertly it's crafted, I think it is appropriate for everyone. But you can sometimes you feel like, I don't need to hear this explanation. I know, I know what that there's a difference between Windows and Mac. Like, I know little things that seem like, but at the same time, it never really takes that much away. It's just kind of like okay, this is clearly some editor was like, could you maybe explain this just in case? But then they didn't catch all of them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So a little bit, I've seen that in his reporting at Bloomberg, because Bloomberg is very much more of outside the industry, and his reporting there is meant to reach a wider audience. And that's a struggle, I think, for crafting your content. So that's not a knock so much as I actually sympathize for that challenge that a writer has. But again, every little thing just highlights how excellent this book is, and how these are the stories are so fascinating. The people are so interesting. And it new light on stories you've heard and a bunch of things you've never heard before. So I definitely recommend people, pick it up or get a copy somehow when it's available, and give it a read.
Will do.
Dang, yeah, that's good. Yeah, well, I mean, Ellen, did you read it? I outed myself. I didn't read it.
No, no. Because Mark was reading it, and it hasn't been released yet.
That's why I didn't read it either.
This is, I mean.
Well, you guys, one of you can read the next one, and I will sheepishly admit that I didn't.
Okay, good.
Well, maybe Mark, if you had read it faster, you could have given it to one of us. And
yeah, gosh.
Yeah,
this is your fault.
Right, because that's how the advanced copies work. Is that I will say that is actually an interesting angle to this, to eat up a little bit more time than I was hoping to in this topic, is because we're new to this sort of being press element of it. Like, we've got press passes for things in the past, but this is still, it's not our main thing. It's not what Nice Games Club is about. Right. But just learning how this process works, how advanced copies are distributed, the kinds of disclaimers you get about FYI, there's going to be typos, stuff like that. Like, just as a person who likes process and logistics, it was enjoyable to sign into this website, which is kind of like Kindle, but for advanced copies, and how that's presented, and how there's still kind of it's almost a market, because there are a lot of people who get advanced copies. It's not an elite group. I mean, we're part of it now, so it's clearly not. And so how those things are messaged within that community, and how, getting a message from the publisher saying, here's a link to download the copy for these particular formats, and the struggle I went through to try to get it so I could do text to speech, because it's not a released book, so getting that was kind of a challenge technically. But also hey, if you want a physical copy, let me know. And I was like, maybe I do, but also I don't really want them. I'm not going to ask them to print a free book when I already kind of have it. So just navigating that it's interesting for someone who's not necessarily purports to be part of that.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and like I said, I think that I'm glad that these stories are getting told, because there's a lot of normally when you hear about these things, it's just this entire company is shut down, and it always sounds like a tragic thing. But seeing it, or reading about the people's stories who are having to deal with this, it's more you get a better understanding of what is actually happening to that. Oftentimes you just see a large number of people lose their jobs, but now you get to understand better. Mm-hmm. Now you can better understand the investments that people were putting in to this game in order to see that, in order to see it to fruition, and see it not, even though see it not pay off, I guess is tragic. But
and reading these stories, you care so much less about the games, and you care a lot about the people, and that makes makes the book a big success. And it does it in a way that it sneaks up on the reader, right? If someone goes in to want to learn all about how BioShock Infinite, led to the closing of that studio, and all of the things that came from that, they will not come away feeling like they were not given the candy they asked for, right? It just makes them, through reading, understand that it's about the people, and you can always read about BioShock Infinite somewhere else, Right. And so I really like that about it.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Are there some uplifting things that happen in the book too? I mean, it is press reset for a reason, right?
It's ruin and recovery is the subtitle. So there are definitely bad things happen, but you also see people pick up and move on. And I haven't really touched on that part of it, but that is a big part of the book as well. And because you're invested in the people that are there, that makes it heartwarming, if not uplifting all the time.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Now you'll read it.
That's our show. Check out our website, nicegames.club, for show notes and links to resources on today's topics. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode and on our programming in general. Go to nicegames.club/feedback and tell us what you think. It's a newly updated feedback form, so we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. You can also get in touch with us on Twitter at Nice Games Club, where Dale tweets about game dev resources and hedgehogs of the day. It's very cute. Or you can email us through contact@nicegames.club. Want to support the show? There are so many ways. Give us a review on your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about your favorite episodes. Join us on Discord by visiting nicegames.club/Discord. And now we're on Patreon. As a patron of the show, you'll get to enjoy bonus content, extra jokes, and more. Sign up at patreon.com/nicegamesclub.
So until we start again, remember to
play nice
and make nice.
Ellen, don't edit this part out. Leave it in.
No! Dang it. Okay. Ellen, edit it out, please. Thanks. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Okay, hold on.
You can edit that part out.
Mark, you screwed him up.
You messed me up.
I did it.
I hate to break it to you, but you're in for a big surprise. 5 years from now, Jane, who's resigning today, will ring the NASDAQ bell, officially launching her company on the public market. And what you'll soon realize is that Jane stole your most valuable data to start her new company on her way out the door. Learn how Code 42 Insider can stop data theft and protect your organization's most valuable assets. Visit code42.com to learn more.
To Spartans, there is no finish line for excellence. Little wonder MSU is a leading research university in the world's top 100. With 34 programs ranked in the top 25 nationally by U.S. News & World Report, and #1 programs in nuclear physics, supply chain management, and education, we are united by a passion to make a difference. See all we're making possible at msutoday.msu.edu. Spartans will.